clearly 10 minutes behind already here. That's okay. We'll get there. This is Walk-Thru the Old Testament Prophets. And so that is what we're going to do, is walk through them. Actually, we're going to run through them for the most part. But we're not going to be dilly-dallying around on this deal. So, what I want to do before I begin, I'm aware that you guys spend a whole bunch of time together and you know each other, but this is the first time that I've seen you. I don't know you at all. And they just handed me, 5 minutes ago, here's a booklet, it tells about the students. So it's like, okay, well that's nice. It just doesn't help me very much. So what I want to do is I want to go around and have you just give me your name, where you're from, and then what future plans you may have. Don't get nervous on the future plans. You can say, I don't know. I don't know is a perfectly good answer. Actually, this is a very good place to be if you say, I don't know. This is a good year to help figure out some of that stuff. And besides that, we make plans, but God is the one that ultimately administers what really happens to us anyway, when the fine print finally is done. So what I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to have you guys go first, and then I'm going to give you some information about myself so you can know me a little bit. Because pretty much each week you get somebody new standing up here. And so I will tell you a little bit about myself. Let me start over here. Is it said Jesse?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Jesse, I'm going to begin with you. We're going to go like this across here. This is going to be relatively common for me. We'll go back here, and we'll go this way to the center, and then we'll pick up you guys, and then we'll go back here where Zachary is and finish up right there. So that'll be the order of what we're doing. Okay? So, Jesse, you may begin. I'm just going to take a few notes to help me remember a little bit about you, and it'll take me most of the week to get all the names and faces, and then by the time I have it, then I leave.
Nice. My name is Jesse Severson. I'm from southeast Minnesota, just a small town, like 1,000 people. Actually right out in the middle of an Amish community out there. Just kind of different. Future plans, I'm not totally sure. That's kind of why I'm here, kind of waiting for God to direct the next step.
Okay, where at in southeast Minnesota? What's the name of the town?
Harmony.
What's it?
Harmony. H-A-R.
Harmony? Okay, and so how far from Rochester?
An hour south.
Hours south of Rochester. Okay, so you're really close to the Iowa border there.
Very close. About
Yes.
5 miles.
5 miles. Yes. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Cool. I'm Gideon Chadwick from Dry Ridge, Kentucky, which is halfway between Cincinnati, Ohio, and Lexington, on I-75. Future plans, I'd like to go to the Master's University in Santa Clara, California, which is where my parents went, probably a degree in business or teaching.
Very nice. And your parents went there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, at our church, we just had a young woman that started leading Bible study last week, and she got her master's degree in business from Masters. And so, yeah, that's where she went to school at. So, anyway, okay, thank you. Okay.
I'm Aline.
Aline, okay.
And I'm from Eastern Douglas. And as far as we get things along, I'm not real sure. Even missions and
I do cross Wyoming somewhat frequently, and I head over to, I come across on the interstate and then go to Rawlins, and I go north up to Casper, and then I go up towards Gillette. And so Douglas is right in there someplace because my sister lives in Wright, Wyoming. So that's not very far away, is it? I think it's close because it seems to me I remember seeing the signs for Douglas frequently. So, okay, very good. That's a lot middle of nowhere kind of place. I've been there. I explain to my boys, if somebody says, the world is overcrowded and we have too many people, I say, just take them to Wyoming, show them the wide open spaces. So, anyway, okay, thank you.
I'm Alexa Monte. I'm from Northern Michigan, a little town called Alaska, and hopefully I'll be going to grad school for molecular biology.
Now, have you Have you done a bachelor's degree yet then? Okay, so what's your bachelor's degree in?
Molecular cytobiology.
Okay. That sounds hard.
It's good though.
It's good though, huh? Where'd you get your degree from?
Cedarville University.
Senator?
Cedarville.
Cedarville, okay. Cool. And where do you want to do your master's at? The trick on the master's is to find a place that you can do your master's and they pay for it.
Yes.
Being a TA research, whatever be the case, that's kind of the next thing on the agenda after the year, I suppose. So, well, that's exciting. Very good, thank you. Okay,
Ben McCord, I'm from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I don't really know, but I think I might go to school to become a forensic scientist.
okay. Anyway, this is a good place to be while you're figuring some of this stuff out, so that's great. So, Ben, that's wonderful. Coeur d'Alene, way in the north. I used to live in Idaho, way to the south. So, anyway,
My name is Isaac Sanford. I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana. My future plan is to do apologetics.
okay. Now, have the rest of the students been giving you a hard time about your accent yet, or are they still giving you a hard time because you sound like you're from Louisiana?
I don't know, both. I guess.
Some are still giving you a hard time? Yeah, sorry about that. So, yes, well, very good. Well, this ought to be an interesting contrast
Yeah,
from Louisiana.
it is.
That's good. January will be the real test. It gets cold here. So, anyway,
I'm Lydia Taylor. I'm from Hartford City, Indiana. And my plan to find a school to go back and do exercise science to become a personal trainer.
okay. Very good. Yeah, we have a guy at our church. He's not in that field right now, but that's what he got his bachelor's degree in. Was exercise science. So, yeah, very good. So, okay,
I'm Candling, they call me Candy.
Candy. Okay.
I'm Eileen's sister,
Ah,
and so
any connected dots here? Okay. Very good.
I'm
Candy.
from Douglas, and just finishing college right now is my plans. Yep, so,
As in finishing this year?
yes,
Yes, very good. I think that's a good goal.
yes.
Okay, excellent. You guys dented the population of Douglas. Douglas is not a big place. Okay, very good.
I'm Abby Shockley. I'm from a small town on the west side of Wyoming, Jackson. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Seems vaguely familiar.
My future plans, aside from memorizing that like enormously long memory verse, is going to college for probably a business and communications degree.
Okay, and any particular place that you're looking at?
Right now I'm looking at Westmont. It's in Santa Barbara.
Yes.
So,
Very expensive place.
yes. Yes.
Wow, so this, like, yeah, you guys have memory verse from Micah, huh?
No, we're only memorizing the entire Bible.
That's good. I mean, you know, you do have a whole year to work on it. You know, so, huh, I love that. Very good. Oh, we'll get to Micah about, probably, we'll get to Micah, maybe not tomorrow, but Wednesday. So, anyway. Okay, very good. Now we're gonna go here.
I'm Julie Carroll. I'm from Sterling, Kansas. That's like right in the middle of Kansas. So, future plans I don't really know. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's perfectly fine. Once again, it's a good place to be. So, okay.
Springs, South Dakota. It's a little town, it's about 750 people, about half a mile from the Minnesota border, and 3 miles from the Iowa border. And I
Oh,
don't-
down in the southeast corner.
Yep, in the corner, kind of about a half hour east of Sioux Falls.
Okay,
And I don't really have future plans after this year.
okay. I drive through the northwest corner of South Dakota.
Kind of by
Over here.
west
So-
side? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
northwest corner. But I see my sister in Wyoming and then I drive up
Alright.
a little further, so I'm completely opposite of where you're from. So, anyway, okay, very good.
I'm Adriana Moncada. I'm from Dallas, Texas. And right now I'm leaning more towards going to Paul Mitchell Dallas for a cosmetology license and then an associate's in business.
And I gather you want to put the two together.
Yeah.
There's a lady that cuts all of the hair in my family. That's my wife and myself and my kids and everything. And so, and that's what she's doing. She worked for people for a long time, but she's doing her own business. And so I get an update each time we go see her. And she's doing fine, but it has been challenging. It was not an easy deal. So, yes. And she doesn't have any education on business and so forth, so she's kind of winging it, but she's making it go at this particular point. But it's kind of challenging, so, okay.
I'm Samuel Walder. I'm from a small town in east central Illinois called Cecil Park. And I guess I'm planning to go to college to major in accounting.
Are you looking at a particular school?
I guess Wesleyan University in Illinois, which is not 2 hours from my town, in a larger town called Gibson City.
Okay, okay. Very good. Very good. Okay, and Samuel, you said? Okay, very good.
Austin Davis, I'm from Middleton, Idaho. And
Middleton, now where is that?
that's about 45 minutes southwest of Boise. About a half hour from Oregon border.
Okay, so you go to like Napa and keep going further?
Yeah, it goes Boise, Eagle, Meridian, Nampa, Star, Middleton.
Okay. Okay, very good. I know where that, I've never been there, I'm roughly familiar with where that's at. Okay, carry on.
And as far as future plans, I'd like to leave this class and go take a shower because I've been
Okay, well, hopefully there's a tendency, hopefully the people around you survive okay before this happens.
It's just a lot of coconut.
I'm joking on that.
Hey,
Okay.
coconut.
So I guess your plans are more short-term at this point than long-term, is that the concept?
Long-term plans are a little more vague. As of next year, I'm looking into river guiding.
Okay.
And then
Here in Jackson or someplace else?
in Idaho.
In Idaho, okay. On the Snake River
Yeah. In the Payette River.
or on the Payette? Okay. Good. Yes, and then when you can just fall out of the raft anytime you need to take a shower, right? So, go to the layer or anything. Okay,
Yeah, I'm Zach, and I'm from California, Southern California, and I am 95%, we'll say 99% positive I'm gonna go into global missions.
okay,
But until then, I'm gonna go to a community college in like Santa Barbara, Monterey, or San Luis Obispo, somewhere around there, and then learn things, and then go everywhere on the planet. So, yeah.
very
that's
good.
kinda it.
Now, so I guess you've got it narrowed down to everywhere in terms of where you want to go? Is that, is there a particular
I'm-
focus? Usually people have an interest,
Yeah.
but you don't have to have.
Well, I'm thinking like Southeast Asia, but like I don't really completely know yet. But I'm like, I mean that's Southeast Asia has been on my heart for years, so it's
Okay.
like, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Good. Excellent. Okay. Very good.
My name is Elizabeth Spees.
kind of, I don't really know where I'm from. I would call it like Wisconsin/Montana, because like my family just moved before I came here, but yeah.
Are your parents in the military or something? Is that why?
No.
Or you just caught between the two or?
Just changing of plans. We're kind of part gypsy, so move around a lot. I don't know. And I'm not really sure about future plans, but I do have a passion for art and sculpture, so maybe an art college.
Okay, very good. Elizabeth, is that what it was? Okay, very good. Okay,
Okay, my name is Hannah Betzahan, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. I don't know what I want to do next year. I want to own a dog farm at some point, but
you want what now?
a dog farm, a
Dog
farm
farm?
with a lot of dogs on it.
Plant them, see if they grow?
That's where I plan to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or pursuing like journalism, but I don't know about that.
And
so.
you write about dogs and growing dogs?
Yes, growing dogs.
Okay. Probably doesn't require a college degree.
Exactly.
The
That's what I'm going
journalism
for.
maybe does. Okay, very good. Okay, it was Hannah.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thanks.
Alright, I'm Jeanette Hoffman. I'm from near Alexandria, Minnesota, which
Okay.
is
In
Midwest. Midwest Minnesota.
how far from St. Cloud? No, it's further south than that, isn't it?
Actually no, Alexandria is northwest of St. Cloud,
Is it
about an hour,
northwest?
only an hour, so.
okay.
And then for future plans, I don't exactly know yet, so that's why I'm here.
Okay, it's a good place to be. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for bearing with me. I realize you all have learned your names and know something about, you know a whole lot more than all of that. But that helps me a little bit to get a feel for you all and your backgrounds. How many of you homeschooled? Okay. How many public school? Okay, a little bit, part of the time, private school? Private school? Okay, well, it looks like we have a whole interesting mix, and maybe you guys switched at some points in between some of those, so, okay, that's great. That's good. If you'll help me, Sarah? Not yet. And I will have to look at that one more time. I couldn't find those sheets on the way up here. And so I was like, I've got to review that, but they were sitting here, so let me hand them to you and you can bail me out as you normally do. So, okay, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Actually, I'll probably tell you more than you want to know, but you'll get a little bit of a feel for who I am. I'm originally from a small town in northern Minnesota by the name of Gonvik. On a good day, it had 350 people, if you counted all the pets. It has grown to 250 people in the meantime, since I left, along with a lot of other people, obviously. I got my bachelor's degree from North Dakota State University in electrical engineering, and I left North Dakota and I went to Phoenix, where it was warm. And I have been thawing out ever since. I worked at a place called Sperry Flight Systems Defense Division. I worked on F-100 jets. These are jets that were used in Korea and some in Vietnam, and then they were retired. And they went to some of them went to the mothball museum in Tucson, Arizona, for example. But what the Air Force did is hired Sperry Flight Systems to take these F-100s that they're not using anymore, to put in enough electronics to fly them without a pilot. So in other words, they were big radio-controlled planes that the Air Force, this was done, and I went to Tyndall Air Force Base to do this when I worked on the aircraft, and they would send up F-15s and 16s from Eglin Air Force Base, which is near Pensacola, to shoot down these planes. Now when we converted them, they would have orange tails and some orange tips indicating that they were drones. What's kind of humorous to me is that this one, YQF-092, with a pilot in it, I was at a Barnes & Noble bookstore 12 years ago maybe, and I was just paging through a book that was on jets, because I like jets, okay? And there's this picture. Well, I crawled all over that particular airplane. That's one of 3 pilots that I worked with when I was at Tyndall. But, you know, we did the most testing with 092. We had about 4 of them, but 092 was the one we used the most frequently. So I used to be an engineer, and they paid me well, and I lived in cool places. I had a great time. I loved being an engineer. But in the process, I got involved in a Bible church, and a guy invited me to help teach the Bible with him. And what happened with these aircraft was they kept blowing them up, okay? We'd send them out and so there was a real temporariness to what I was doing that I was aware of versus teaching the Word of God. So I quit engineering. I went to Dallas Theological Seminary, got my master's in 1986. Then I moved to Idaho, to southern Idaho, the Burley, Paul, Hayburn area, which is probably about maybe 3 hours from here, something like that. And I taught high school students for 14 years. So it was, I don't know, because of where you guys are from, you're probably not familiar with the Mormon church having what's called the LDS seminary system. They have buildings next to junior highs and high schools where students are released to go off campus and take classes taught by the Mormon church. Well, in southern Idaho they had this. Well, at Minnetonka High School, they also, off the other direction of the campus, there was a building called the Christian Ed building that 8 churches supported, and students could come over and take a class in Bible that I taught. So it was like a one-room schoolhouse, but I taught Bible to public school students. This was not for credit, but I taught them for 14 years, and I enjoyed it for 13 of those 14 years. And then I concluded I needed to make a change. So while I was in Idaho, I did my doctorate of ministry degree at Western Conservative Baptist in Portland, and met a man that was working on his doctorate of ministry degree from Salt Lake City. And he said to me, he was a senior pastor there, and he said, you know, our church is growing, we're going to need somebody like you to come join us, so I want to pray that you join us. And I said, go right ahead, I'm happy where I am, I'm not going anyplace. Well, I'm now at that church in Salt Lake City, to see how that one played out. So that's where I'm at. It's called Grace Community Bible Church, and I am the associate pastor, not the senior pastor. And that's our church. I'm involved in ministry teams and adult education and teaching and that sort of stuff. So, any questions at this point? I don't want to tell you about my family. Okay. Here is the crew. My wife Ann, and then the oldest is Daniel, then it goes to Timothy, then it's over here to Andrew, and then it's to Michael. And Michael is the youngest at 19 at this point. You know, he's not 19, he just turned 20. I have no teenagers in the house. It's a new idea. I've had teenagers, at least 1, 2, or 3 of them for years. The 2 boys on the right, we adopted them when we were in Idaho. We adopted them from Romania. We traveled to Romania and we adopted them. They were ages 1 and 3 at the time that we got them and brought them back here. They each have their own set of challenges. Daniel, the one on the right, he has cognitive impairments, and he works at Kroger's grocery store and does bagging. That's what he does at this point. Timothy, he has a mild cerebral palsy, and so he has some physical difficulties plus some hearing loss. And life is a real struggle for him. He's had a variety of jobs and has a tough time keeping jobs and things like that. So he's a challenge. He just started working as a cook at Pizza Hut last night. That's his newest job. So we'll see how that goes. These 2 down here, Andrew is a junior at the University of Alabama, majoring in electrical engineering. Oh, actually, he changed it to computer engineering as a subcategory of electrical. Electrical is what I did. Michael is a sophomore at the University of Alabama. He's majoring in mechanical engineering. And so that's where they're at. Oh, there's my question slide. Anyway, that's everything I was going to tell you about myself, unless you'd like to ask me some questions, which you're welcome to do. You don't have to have questions, it's okay. Yes?
Did you grow up a Christian? Have you always been a Christian?
No, I have not. I grew up in a religious family, and it was Lutheran in northern Minnesota. In northern Minnesota, you're more likely either Lutheran or Catholic. There's a few Baptists sprinkled in, but that's pretty much what it is. My grandfather died, and I had gone to church. I'd gotten baptized, I'd been confirmed, I'd done all the things that the Lutheran church said I should do. But when my grandfather died as a senior in high school, I had no answers. What happened to my grandfather? Where did he go? What happens when we die? How do we know? Can we know? Kind of a thing. And so when I was a freshman in college, someone on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ came and talked with me and explained that God loved me, I knew that I was a sinner, I knew that Christ had died for me, I knew that, but I needed to place my faith in Jesus Christ for eternal life. That nobody had explained to me before. So in my dorm room, as a freshman in college, I placed my faith in Jesus Christ. It was a very disappointing experience. There were no angels, nothing happened. It was not an emotional event at all, but nevertheless, the Lord gave me new life at that point. So, anyway, yes, that's the case. Okay, good. Anything else? Good.
So, from that point, how long did it take you to go to college to do what you wanted to do?
Good question. What occurred was I was a freshman majoring in engineering, and so I got involved with Campus Crusade with Christ, because that was the person on staff had led me to the Lord. And Campus Crusade has I'm going to exaggerate slightly here, but I'm only slightly exaggerating. You get saved one week, then the next week you're doing evangelism, telling people about how you got saved, and then the next week you're leading a Bible study. And they don't waste any time in terms of getting you involved. I've exaggerated, but it goes quickly. So during college, I was involved with Campus Crusade for Christ. Very good experience. I learned a lot. Then they challenged me to go on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ. And I said, that's an interesting idea, but I've been reading the Bible, and there seems to be an awful lot of emphasis on the church. So I think I'm going to go be an engineer for a while, because I've gone to school for quite a while to become an engineer, and then I will get involved in the local church and we'll go from there. And then, that's the part I told you a little earlier, then I was an engineer for about 3 years, and a guy got me involved in Desert Springs Bible Church in Phoenix, Arizona. And over that time I was like, I love engineering, I live cool places, I make nice money, I love jets, I had a great time. And I did well, I wasn't a bad engineer. But I quit that, because at that point I thought, if I go into ministry, I've got a problem. I don't know anything. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to go to school. So I quit engineering, went to Janssen. So that's not pretty much. Yes?
How many years have you been teaching here now?
That's a good question. I was trying to think of that on the way up here. I think it's 8, maybe. It's a bunch. Do you have a faintest idea?
I don't
I don't have any idea either. It's been a while, because all you guys, and Tim, and there's a whole collection that have survived this. So, you'll be happy to know. Yes, so this is a lot of fun. It's particularly a lot of fun because if you guys look over your classes that you're taking this year, if I were you, I would be looking over that list and I'd say, that looks pretty interesting, that looks kind of interesting. The Old Testament prophets, a whole week of the Old Testament prophets. How am I going to survive this? Oops. You'll do better than survive. You'll do well. So that's a joy for me to help you appreciate and learn the prophets, and we are going to walk through them, and I think you will find the process interesting and helpful. And so let me tell you a little bit about the process. to do this, I've got to step through the syllabus to give you the information here. What you need to know. I know they've probably given you one of these, right? Did they give you one of these? Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm gonna give you another one. We're gonna step through it, make sure, I don't think there's any changes with it, but I'll give you the one we're going to look at. Oh, you did this one now, right? You know? Okay, now, you see what happens when anybody starts looking like they're falling asleep, okay? This is what happens. Okay, let's step through this. This part's a little monotonous, I'm sorry, but you need to understand this, okay? Here we go. The purpose of this course is to learn a synthesized overview of the 16 prophetical books of the Old Testament by using the walk-through method of visualizing biblical history to relate the messages of these books to our lives today. It's a synthesized overview. So in other words, we are not going in and studying anything in depth. What I mean by that is we're not studying anything in depth. We are just cruising, okay? We'll hit some, it's a straight hit and run deal in terms of some passages and stuff we're gonna look at. We're just gonna keep moving. We are, what we're gonna do is we're gonna learn a way of saying words and hand motions and that sort of thing to remember what this is about. And you'll see that today. We'll go over some of that today. Now, have any of you been to walk through the Bible, either Old Testament or New Testament? Old Testament goes like creation, fall, flood, nations, 4,000 years ago, Persian Gulf. Nobody? That's interesting. It's really good. So that's the Old Testament. There's a New Testament one as well. That's what I mean by walkthrough. We're going to have hand motions and key phrases that are going to help us with the prophets. When I was at Dallas Seminary, I was learning these prophets, and I was mostly just getting confused. So I signed up to teach a class on Walk-Thru the Prophets, which forced me then to create and make a Walk-Thru the Prophets with hand motions to memorize them and make sense out of them, which I did really for my own benefit. Turns out it's beneficial to other people as well. Okay, got the general idea on purpose? Now we're going to talk specifics. Instructional objectives. I really did not put these down here just because I need to fill this part of the page. Every student, and I do mean every one of you, will be able to do the following 4 things by the end of the week. Number 1, acquire an appreciation for the prophetical books and their applicability for today, especially Jeremiah. Now that one, acquiring an appreciation, is hard to measure. I think you can tell me at the end of the week whether you have acquired any appreciation for the prophets. Number 2 is very measurable. Draw an Old Testament timeline, 1 page, showing where the prophets fit into the history of Israel. Okay, that is very measurable. Verbally summarize the message and historical placement of each of the prophets, we're talking writing prophets, using the dramatized walkthrough, which is hand motions and keywords that will be taught this week. That's what we'll spend a fair bit of time on. Apply at least one of the lessons from the prophets to his or her life this week. With every one of the prophets, we will go in and look at it a little bit, and I will draw an application from each one of the prophets. And the hope is that the Spirit of God will use one of those in your lives. Not every one of them, not all the prophets, but there should be some that you should resonate with and respond to. Okay, backside, course requirements. Now here's the mechanics. How this works. These are the things you will have to do this week to match with the class information about the Old Testament prophets and get a good grade. Number 1, daily quizzes. A quiz will be given each class period with the exception of class period 1. So there'll be 4 total. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The quizzes are to review the material from the last class period. Now, on these quizzes, what will happen? This is so easy. I'm going to tell you what you need to know for the quiz. You do not have to guess. I will say tomorrow, and I'll do this later, here. I'll say tomorrow you're going to have a quiz, and here are the questions. So make sure you know the answers to these questions. Got the idea? You do not have to guess on what it is I want you to know. I'm going to make it crystal clear. Now, I expect you to know it. Don't screw it up. I've handed it to you on a silver platter. Okay? But I do expect you to know it. Okay? But I'm going to make it really clear. This is what you need to know. So the quiz, easy. Reading assignments. Reading includes selected portions of each of the prophets and the section on prophets from Dr. Ben Ware's book, Survey of the Old Testament. In other words, B&B, Bible and Benware. Reading is required. Okay? Let me give you the one for tomorrow. I'm not going to toss these because it actually turns out that half sheets don't toss that well. I do know this. I don't know if there's enough there. I think that would be it. But let me give you these so you can see what I'm talking about. I had them all up. Any extras there?
Yeah.
Okay, good, that's what we've done. Okay, here's what it looks like. Reading assignment 1, this is due tomorrow. So on the left-hand side, there's Dr. Benware's book. Can I just grab yours for a moment? This is an amazing book. This is an amazing book. It's concise. It says so much, and it has pictures. This is the best part, you understand, okay? Now, you need to realize that all things are not that way. And I know I'm telling you the obvious, but let me show you what I've got here. Here is a commentary on the minor prophets. So in other words, this does not include Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. Those are not included. 1,445 pages. Okay? How many pictures? None. Zero. Not so much as a diagram in this thing. Okay? Isn't that crazy? I am not going to live long enough to read this thing. I'm not. Okay? But I have it as a reference book, and I pull it down every once in a while when I need like a zillion details on one passage. Because this is the baby that's got it. Unless I'm looking in Isaiah and it's not in here. But look at it. It's amazing. Anyway, Benware's book is so good. It's wonderful. So you're going to read his chapters. They are short. There's 6 chapters. You get a point for each one of the chapters that you read, okay? Over on the right-hand side, I need you to read some of the prophets that we're going to be talking about. This is roughly the order we're going to be talking about starting tomorrow. I might start a little today, we'll see. Now, I'm aware, is it still the requirement you guys, instead of memorizing, you are going to read the whole Bible? Okay. So, now there's some chapters that I want read here, but you may elect at this time to say, okay, the parentheses tells you how many chapters there are in the book. So Hosea has 14 chapters. You may want to take this opportunity to read your 14 so you can check it off and say, I read it, okay? I need you to read 1, 2, and 3, and 12, because I'll do some comments on those, okay? But, once again, it may be wisdom for you just to chunk it out at the same time and get it done. But I'm asking, in this case, that's 4 chapters. Amos has 3 chapters, so you're reading 1, 2, and 7. Remember, the parenthesis tells how many chapters there are in the book. You're not reading the 9th chapter in this case. Nahum, you read the whole thing, 1 to 3. Obadiah, the whole thing. 1, Jonah, you probably read before, but easy read. 1 to 4, you get 15 points for that. Okay, on the back side, here's where it gets a little more tricky. It's blank, but notice the instruction on the right-hand side. On the back of this sheet, write one question you have from each of the prophetical books you read. So, write a question from Hosea. Got it? Then you write one question from Amos. Then you write a question from Nahum. Now the idea is, come up with the hardest question you can come up with. Okay? Stump the professor. See what you can come up with. Now I know it's popular to say there's no such thing as a bad question. Okay? That's hogwash. There are bad questions. Do not give me a bad question. Okay? Why does God have 3 letters? That's a bad question. You get it wrong. Okay? Do not give me silly questions. Do not give me a question where the second half of the verse answers the question. The concept would be that you've read the whole verse and you have a question about it. So don't ask me about the first part if the answer's in the second part. That too is not a good question. Now don't stress over this. Just come up with something that you read and you don't know the answer to. I'm not expecting you to know much about the prophets. You can ask a very basic question that you don't know about. That is a great question. Okay? Just don't ask a dumb question. They exist. I usually don't have to mark students down too much on, some students give me a few, but generally I'm in good shape. Any questions on that? I'm not trying to be rude on that, but.
How many students have stumped you? Have any?
Yes, a number have. And there's two things that have happened, and it's great fun. And now, I need to break this to you, I forgot to say this, I'm not gonna answer every one of your questions. It turns out, I started doing that when I was teaching this, it turns out it took me like 9 hours, to answer all the questions. And I concluded I was spending more time on this assignment than the students were spending on the assignment. I thought, I can't keep doing this. Usually there are two categories. One category is they've just asked a perceptive question, and I have not researched it, so I don't know the answer, but an answer exists. And those I often chase down because I'm intrigued. I'm like, that's a good question. I wonder what the answer is. And then I'll elect to just chase it down because I want to know. Then the other questions that are very good perceptive questions, often why? Why is something this way? And the fact of the matter is, God has an answer, but we don't. So I really can't come up with an answer, but those are very legitimate questions. Why did God do it this way? Why did it play out that way? Those are excellent questions. And those are the ones I don't have answers for. But neither one, I don't think anybody else does at this point either. So, but that's a great question. Ask me that. So, okay, anybody else on that? Got the general idea? The reason I do this is not busy work. You have got to think about what you're reading to ask a question. Do you know that? You have to think about what you're reading to ask a question. If you just do reading, you can say, I read it, and there was no thought that passed through my mind, but I read it. But if I ask you to write a question, you're going to have to engage the brain for just a little bit to think about a question. That's not good. There's a rhyme and reason for this stuff. Okay, write down what translation you're using. Sometimes I have to research one of 10 translations to find out which translation has the particular word you're asking a question about, and before I can address the question. So put down whatever you're using. Make sure to do that. I appreciate that. I'm a little up a creek without it. Okay, that's reading assignments number 2 on the sheet here. Any other questions on that? Okay. Jeremiah reading, 20%. You will need to read the entire book of Jeremiah, so you'll be able to check this one off this week. As you read each chapter, you will write down a title or summary for each chapter on the chart supplied by the teacher. You also need to ask 5 questions about Jeremiah. Okay, now Jeremiah has like 52 chapters, and you only have to ask 5 questions, so that isn't very many, but you need to ask 5 questions. This needs to be handed in by 12:30 on Friday, the 21st, okay? So, kind of after lunch. Now, I'm going to start you with that process. I don't know if I'll do it today here or not, because I think we're running out of time. But I've got the chart right over there, and I think I've got it on my slides, so I'll show you this in just a bit. Oh yeah, there it is. There's what the Jeremiah chart looks like. Yeah, let me just give you that at this point. Actually, I'm going to hold on giving it to you, because actually we're going to start this as a class, in class. I'm going to make sure that you got the idea of this. So that's what it looks like. Now, I'm also going to give you a copy of this. Here's a sample. This is the one that I did of Ezekiel when I was at Dallas Seminary. They had us do this all the time. And this was very brief in terms of what is, and I'm not going to have you do all of this stuff. What I'm mainly interested in is in these giving chapters right here, as you proceed through the book, that you put a summary of what each chapter is about. Now, there's more to charting, but I'm not going to have you do that. But you can go on and figure out, well, how does the book break down? In this case, Ezekiel, here's before the fall of Jerusalem, there's during the fall of Jerusalem, and here's after the fall of Jerusalem. That's how Ezekiel breaks down. And so all of a sudden you start making sense out of what's happening with the book and how it flows and how it goes. I'm not going to ask you to do that part. I'm just asking you to do the part here in the center where you fill in a little summary for each one of the chapters. But I think I'm going to take some time tomorrow. I'm going to give you the sheet, and I'm going to have you start on it and then you can ask me questions about it, and I'll make sure that you're kind of tracking. I want you to do this stuff tonight, because I realize this is an afternoon class, you only have the evening. Just do this tonight, and that'll be Jeremiah. Yes?
So when you say summary, it just has to be like a phrase, not
A
like
phrase,
a paragraph?
not a paragraph at all. And actually, it isn't usually, most of them are never this short. Even when I did Jeremiah, I couldn't get it that short. It might be a phrase of 12, it might be 3 phrases of 4 words each or something. But yeah, it's just, and you just keep them on the lines. The idea is you're forced to do a summary of what's in that chapter kind of thing. So, yes?
So, clarification, we would not be allowed to use the same summary that the Bible uses for that chapter?
Right, it's a very good question. It's a better question than you probably are suspecting, because here's what the deal is. I need you to read it and come up with your own conclusion about what's in there. But let's say it's about dry bones, okay? There's a chapter, in Ezekiel, there's a chapter on dry bones, which is what, 39, I suppose? Oops, that didn't go well. 37, yeah, there's dry bones right there, so, yes. We're gonna talk about this, dry bones right there. What happens though, when I've done this, I go through and I figure out what my summary is. There are various times what is written in my Bible at the top of the chapter is the same thing I came up with. Okay, so I'm not going to cross-reference all your Bibles, and you guys are all using the same thing, aren't you? Oh, are you all using New American Standard? No? Okay. They gave you all that, okay, but you're not all using that. Okay, that's fine, just whichever one you're using. But, so if you end up using the title chapter, that's okay. I'm not going to say that's wrong because that's the one that's in your Bible. Because I've arrived at the same titles myself when I've done summaries. Now, if I detect, yes, you can see where that one goes. Okay, that's a different story. That has happened. So, but anyway, I've been around the block enough on this. Okay, I can figure some of this out. Okay, great question. Any other questions on that? And I'll have you practice this. So.
For the 5 questions, are
Yes.
we putting them on that chart? Or
Just
like,
write them on the back.
okay.
And once again, try to come up with the toughest questions. And Jeremiah has a ton of stuff. So I mean, you can come up with some great questions in Jeremiah. So, yeah.
Are they just questions that we don't know, or are they questions that we can try to like stuff?
They should be questions you don't know the answer to. Okay, if you know the answer to it, don't ask the question. No, but if I were you, my goal would be, okay, I want to stump this guy. That's what I'm shooting for. Let's make this interesting at least. You know, try to come up with the hardest questions you can. Okay? And you will get questions I don't know the answer to. And I can highlight some of those. If some of you got some great questions I don't know the answer to, I'll say, hey, I got to ask this question. I don't know the answer to this question. So I just think that's fun. When I was a student, at least. So, okay, great questions. Anything else? Okay. Oh, look at it. My question slide. I put those in to try to make sure I ask you all questions. So, okay, it is, here's what we're going to do next is, why study the Old Testament prophets? Okay? At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're probably starting to feel like that a little bit, so let's take a 10-minute break, then we'll come back, and then we'll be busy and hit this hard.
Oh, here, then unzip mine. Is this yours then? Because I didn't
It's all kind of been old up after like movie and stuff.
Like that was awful me like in the corner like trying to like
Where is
keep
that?
up with you guys and I'm like
That's just a screensaver came up with. I feel like it could be like I don't know.
That would have been hilarious. But I would have laughed so hard.
because it's especially
pretty
bad
cool.
when I first wake up in the morning.
Yeah. I should figure out what that is.
Tell me
This definitely needs to be
immediately
fixed.
if I
Yeah.
go to the wrong item.
Okay, sure.
There's a chance I might do that today.
Oh, sure. Yep, no problem.
Okay. So
Usually I review it all the way up here, so I'm like, I got this
is
thing,
there
but
food in the
I couldn't find it.
crackers and cheese and snap peas?
Why don't we have one?
Sorry.
You guys are sticking around in here?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright.
Go take a nap.
I feel like it.
Oh, Tim.
Yeah, naps.
Take some medicine.
This is the time. Sorry. Okay, we gotta move through this fast to not put anybody to sleep. When we get to there, then it'll be okay.
Thank you, Morris. It's actually kind of warm in here.
It is very warm in here.
Yeah. At least it seems like this.
Yes. If we can't.
And you're wearing flannel, Candy,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, well, it was snowing this morning, so I thought, well, it's gonna be cold today.
Yeah. I know, but usually when it's snowing, that means that it's warmer outside than
Yeah.
normal. Although I guess we're not quite in the full swing of winter yet.
Yeah.
But I've noticed in the past, it's like, oh, it's really warm outside today.
Yeah.
So that must mean it's gonna snow, and then it does, and then goes back down to being in the negative.
And like, for us, we'll have to get used to it, because like, we're used to wind chills, because if it's winter, it's windy. So
Yeah,
you all
right.
always have wind
Yeah,
chills.
it's not
Here.
really windy.
Yeah, you're from Douglas?
Uh-huh,
The
yeah.
wind never stops, does it?
No, it does sometimes in the summer, but not in the winter.
Out of the winter,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kind of seems like Rock Springs is a little bit like that too. It always seems to be windy whenever I'm down there.
Yeah, Rock Springs is too, and Rock Springs is at a high altitude.
Yeah.
It's quite high. They actually have a short growing season
Oh,
for
really?
this. Oh yes,
Oh.
it is. It's kind of a challenge actually.
Huh.
So yeah. Let's see. Okay, I gotta go grab something. No, maybe it's here.
Oh, Derek,
No, it's not here.
I give you a flash drive. Can you give me those pictures? Or do you want to put it on Dropbox and just invite me?
No, flash drive's faster.
Okay. Do you have a flash drive you want to use?
I get you.
Or? Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
It's the speakers. There we go.
Can I turn? I think it's because he left the room with
Okay.
his microphone on.
Okay.
I think that's why it's squeaking.
Yeah, because it didn't do that until he left.
Right. Yep.
So does Tim have a cold or what's the...
I'm not sure. He might have that little stomach bug that's going around.
Oh.
That Clay and Kaysen had, and
Mm.
I think Scott might have had it.
Was he at church yesterday? I can't remember.
No. Yeah, I wasn't at church. He wasn't at church.
So you were sick.
Yeah, I have that cold,
Oh.
so trying to take it easy and not
Yeah.
be around people a whole lot.
Yep.
But yeah, you haven't gotten sick yet, have you?
Just that one afternoon,
Sure.
which I think, mostly, and it could have been that other people are getting sick, but I think that for me, and it happens at home too, if I get stressed over something,
You'll get sick.
I'll get sick.
Yeah, sure. Yep. I turned the volume down on his microphone because it was squeaking because he left.
Okay.
So, just so you know. Are you warm enough?
Yeah.
It's actually kind of warm in here. I don't know if it's because we're closest to the fire or what.
I'll take it though.
Yeah. I like being warm.
It's better to be a little too warm than a little too cold.
Yep. How you doing, Ben?
Well, I now have coffee, so considerably better.
Good. Good. That is good. Did you take a nap after breakfast?
So that's a long time.
Their life wasn't exactly perfect, kids.
You guy down at McDonald's just said,
Usually she laughs. I make fallen.
yeah, that was so
That'd be good. Once you start, you ain't
It's
finished
like, this
until
trips,
they're
the
fully
stuff goes
fallen.
everywhere. Help!
Very fully independent, you know?
I feel
like my mom.
But
crazy.
you just speak to someone?
This is not
Yeah.
fair.
Okay,
Guys, can you stop?
let's see, is this one there we go.
Are you-
Anyway, thank you guys
Yeah,
for
I
coming
guess
back in a
kinda
timely
hard.
fashion so we can head on. I realized that I hadn't finished this. Sorry about that, go back to the back side of this. I was on the Jeremiah chart and I got off base here. So let's come back. Okay, number 4, because this is like really important. Demonstrate to the professor that you can do the walkthrough. Notice, 50% of your grade. Okay, so that's important. Now this involves two things. This involves drawing a 1-page Old Testament timeline with the prophets correctly placed. So I'm gonna give you a blank sheet of paper, and that's what you're gonna do. Okay? Then, you are going to, and individually, demonstrating the walkthrough, hand motions, keywords, to the professor on Thursday afternoon, October 20th. Do we have a schedule conflict of any kind? Okay. And you can ask for one help. Now, let me explain this to you, because some of you is gonna get this really nervous, but you have a few days to get used to it, okay? What's gonna happen on Thursday is I'll be over there, and what's the section called where the kitchen is?
The commons area.
The commons? Okay, not where you dine, at the dining room,
Right.
but the commons area? Okay, I'm in the commons area, and a student will come in, and you can bring a friend if you like, if you're nervous about it. And then I'm gonna hand you a piece of paper, and you don't get to use notes or anything, you're gonna draw this 1-page thing. You're gonna put all the prophets in the proper place, in terms of where they fit in, time-wise, okay? Then I'm gonna grade your sheet right there, tell you how you did, and then I'll say you can begin. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna stand in front of me, and you're gonna wave your hands around, say keywords, and you're gonna give me a summary of the Old Testament prophets in chronological order with a key phrase in less than 2 minutes. Okay? That's what you're gonna do. Will they be able to do this?
Yes.
You will. We will spend the week preparing for that. You will be able to do that. Questions?
The timeline, is it a specific timeline you want us to do?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right down to about the letter.
So we'll.
But I'll teach it to you.
Okay.
Okay.
You will not be asked to do anything unless I have taught you what it is you need to do. Okay? Sometimes teachers ask students to do things that they haven't taught them to do. I don't think that's teaching, actually, myself. But, no, you guys will know exactly what I expect. Not only that, we're going to go over a whole bunch of times. You'll be amazed how many times we go over this till you get it. Okay? So, but you will. So, when you look at that, the quizzes are not hard. I'm going to tell you what's on them. The reading you just kind of have to do, but Benware is rather brief. You read the prophets, ask some questions. The chart will start on with Jeremiah tomorrow, and as long as you don't wait till the last minute, the chart is not bad. And Jeremiah, I think you'll find kind of interesting. It's going to be a little bit of work to kind of read through it, and it's 52 chapters. It just seems like it goes on for a while. But it will help you to get a concept of what a prophet is about by the time you've worked through Jeremiah. It's a profitable exercise, but it is work. Some of you are paying attention.
I refuse to laugh.
You can do that. That's legit. That's legit. Okay. If I was in your shoes, my question would be, okay, how do I get an A in this thing? Here's the answer. Get a final grade, average of at least 94% on the course requirements listed above. Items 1 to 4. Letter grade percentages are designated by the school, and that's what they are. Now, the good news is, let's say I've taught for 8 years, honestly, can't remember. Virtually everybody has gotten an A, okay? Not everybody. The way that'll kill it for you is you just decide not to do the reading and you hand in a 0. I can't do anything with zeros. You get zeros, okay? Or you, I had one occasion where where a student just did a poor job. Just, instead of a summary, they put down a single word, and I didn't know what the word was about, and some things like that. You guys give it a good try. I will really work with you, and you'll do well. You will do well. So I'm gonna help you to do well. So it's my objective for all of you to get this material and all get A's. That's what I'm hoping for. So anyway, okay. Sorry, I had to go back that. Any other questions?
I just wondered, do you care what translation we read out of when we're doing the?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. Just note it, so that, because the wording will change a little bit sometimes, and especially if you have a question that's related to specific wording. So, but you're really flexible. I mean, you could even go to a New International, or you could even go to a Living Bible translation if you wanted to, because you're reading a quantity of material. So I'm really flexible on that.
Excellent.
So that's a good question. Anything else? You might think of some more too. Yes.
When it says one help, is that one help for each of them or one help over all of it?
On the sheet of paper that I give you, you don't get any helps. You just have to do it, okay? Now, when you start standing in front of me and you're doing this, and you're starting to get a little nervous since you get stuck at some point, I'll just wait for you. But if you say, oh, I just don't know what's next, then I'll tell you what's next. That's called one help. But in the whole thing, you only get one of those.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying to test, I don't want to test, do you get nervous in front of me? Probably. What I want to know is if you know the material. So sometimes I have students that they do this, and they go like this, and they stand there. And I just wait, it's okay. And then they go on and they do some more, and then they get stuck again. And I don't necessarily help them unless they ask me. And then they go, oh yeah, okay. And then they go, that's okay, it's not a race. I want you to know the material, and I understand that you're gonna be nervous because you are on the spot. You are.
Have you ever had anyone cry during their verbal walk?
This is the first time for
You
everybody.
might have one. What?
For the ones that are a little nervous, they just bring in a friend, and one of them does it, and then the other one does it, and that works quite fine. So you can't do it together. You're individually responsible to do it yourself. So that's what we'll do. So good question. No, at least they didn't cry, at least in front of me anyway. Okay, now I think I'm finally done. Any other questions on this guy? Are everybody clear on what you need to do and what we're doing this week? Because this is the plan.
Oh,
Yes?
who is that?
Yeah, who is that? Good question. You know, early photographs of Jeremiah were hard to come by. So this was like the best I could do. So it's up to you. I am curious, did anybody think of somebody in particular?
I was totally thinking Jeremiah.
Were you thinking Jeremiah? Okay, yeah. You think Isaiah, Jeremiah, one of the big guys, you know, that wrote the long books. Yeah, there's no right answer on that, but I just thought it was a really cool picture in terms of, it looks serious, and it's a Middle Eastern man. That's how I purchased it from a stock thing, and it's a Middle Eastern man. That's what it is. So anyway, we'll go with Jeremiah if you like. Okay, why do we study the Old Testament prophets? I mean, in one sense, you're here at Jackson Hole Bible College, and they said you are going to. Okay, so there. But good reasons include that they're inspired. Now, you already know this, that it's part of the inspired text. It's a major portion. I'm not going to quiz you on this, by the way. You're welcome to write this down. This is not on the quiz. Because of the character of God and because of the connection. Okay, so I'm going to step through and explain those four. The first one, which is kind of an obvious one in terms of 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17, all scripture, is inspired by God and profitable. There's our pun. For teaching, for reproof, for correction, for training in righteousness, that the man or woman of God may be adequate, equipped for every good work. And so the prophets are distinctive. They stick out in the sense that they are inspired scripture that God had written. So that automatically means that they have value. There's only 66 books on the total planet that are qualified with that statement. I mean, there's a lot of books written nowadays, and there have been a lot of books written, and there will be a lot of books written. There's only 66 of them that are inspired on the whole planet. That's it. The second thing is it's a major portion of the Bible. When you look at the Bible, it's a library. The Old Testament has 3 sections, and it, hold on just a second here, I need to see if I'm doing it. There's a part I'm wondering if I'm doing it now or later. Okay, I'm not doing it now. Okay. The Old Testament has 39 books, has 3 sections: historical, poetical, prophetical. And the prophetical books are the written prophets. There were really hundreds of prophets in the Bible, Old and New Testament. In this class, we're only looking at the writing ones, which are, that have books. Those are the only ones we're looking at. And then the New Testament, historical letters and prophetical, 27 books. And so you see that the prophetical books, that section is a pretty good size. It's 17 books in terms of the whole Bible. Now, if you look at verses, just by way of reference, you have 31,218 verses in the Bible, and you start breaking them down in terms of percentages by verses. The Old Testament historical section is the largest at 41%, but you can see that the Old Testament prophetical books are 18% in terms of the whole Bible. Now, a lot of those books are short, but when you add it up by chapters, it still ends up being about 18% of the whole Bible. That's a pretty significant part. That's a larger section than the New Testament historical books, which are Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts. The prophets are actually more chapters than those. That's how it breaks down in terms of that 18%. Now, if you look at just the Old Testament prophets are almost a quarter. They're 24% of the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, that's a major part of what's going on. Oh, there's my new one. I just showed you my old one. I didn't delete it. Here's my new one. I was like, I need to update that slide, so I did. 24%. But I didn't delete. Let me do that right now. I didn't delete the old one. I didn't think this one was very nice looking. I thought that one was much better. Yeah, that's better. Okay, I feel better now. Okay, in terms of the Bible, just so you can visually see it, here are all the chapters in the Bible that you have to read during this year. Oh, nice shot off the roof, except I didn't get much distance on it. I have to go to the back row. Thank you. Okay, we didn't get one yet. Okay. Okay, this is mostly just to kind of help you. I want you to notice the colors on the deal, that's why I did it. This is everything, Genesis through Revelation, every book and every chapter. So if you're doing a checklist thing, you can check this thing off. Notice on the bottom of the first column, you have the major prophets in the purple, and then on the top right, you have the minor prophets. Notice they're a lot shorter, that are purple on the right. So that kind of gives you a perspective in terms of what the quantity is in a visual, so you can say, okay, here's what it consists of. Oh, now by the way, on the front end here, I'm going to give you a few handouts. A lot of the stuff that I want you to know, I'm going to just give to you in terms of handouts. So, I've got these I won't throw.
Oh, thanks.
There's more than I need here, so here's some extras. Here, open up one of those packages and distribute or get somebody to do so. There you go. I think there's 4 right there for you guys. All in the form right here. There's 2 there, so you can one back to me perhaps. Thank you. And because you don't have one for the props, you actually have 2 of the prop gifts, not that one.
Look at that, like the face.
So, okay. Everybody get one now. And here's what I want you to do, is I want you to take one of these guys, see this, the prophets, and then slide that into the into the front like that, okay? That sort of thing. So let me hand those out. These are card stock, so I won't throw these. These can hurt you. I won't tell you how I know that this will hurt people. I'll just say that it's so, okay? There's certain things I know. You can pull your hand up and give me that one back. Yours was an illustration. Yeah, next one? Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, and then this little guy here, so you have an edge thing, says walk through the Old Testament, slide that guy in like that. Okay? Got the idea? So that works. So, let me give you those. Now, I don't want anybody talking to me about, I lost my handout, I'm not organized, I don't know where it went. You don't want any of that sort of stuff.
I lost my handout.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe only 3 people. Other than that.
Oh, wow.
And if you have any trouble sliding it in, open it up like this. If anybody, if you have trouble, even then if you have trouble sliding it in, let me know. I have tweezers, and tweezers will help you get it in place if you need them. So, everybody getting there logistically? Okay, everybody set on that? Okay, very good. Continuing on, why study? It's a major portion that's inspired because of the character of God. And the connection, that was our place there. The character of God. What happens is, when we go to some of these books, they have information about God that we don't find in other books. Okay? And it adds to what the Bible tells us about God. For example, the holiness of God is portrayed magnificently in Isaiah 6 in a way that's not found other places. It's very amazing. God's glory is talked about in Ezekiel. Some of it is kind of weird, in fact, but His glory is emphasized, once again, in a way that we don't see in other passages in the Bible. So that the prophets fill in this kind of gap that with descriptions that we just don't find other places. And then God's justice we see in Amos portrayed very strongly, even though it's not a long book. We see these portrayals of God, and then connections. I use bungee cords as the concept that there's things in the New Testament that are bungee corded back to the Old Testament. And you would be familiar with this. For example, you've got Zechariah 9:9. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout in triumph, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. He is just and endowed with salvation. Humble and mounted on a donkey, even a colt, the foal of a donkey. That's in Zechariah. Well, where does that show up? You don't have to give me the reference, tell me the event.
The triumphal entry.
Triumphal entry, exactly. And that's what Jesus did. He came in on the colt. The Jews knew that Zechariah said that was going to be the case. This was of great significance. If they didn't know their Old Testament prophets, they wouldn't have known how important and significant that was. So John 12 to 15 is where it's talked about specifically in terms of there's a connection to the Old Testament. Now, Micah 5:2, but as for you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth from me to be ruler of Israel. His going forths are from long ago, from the days of eternity. Now, does anybody remember where that is referenced? You answered the first one, somebody else gets to answer the next one. Bethlehem, key word because I underlined it.
Maybe it's the birth of David, or Jesus, that's also where David was from.
It is where David's from, and it's the birthplace of Jesus, and you're exactly on track. Do you remember the context where this discussion took place? Or anybody else, you didn't have to be the one to answer. Yeah,
Wasn't it when the teachers of the law were talking to the Magi?
almost. You're on the right idea. Herod talked to his wise men
Okay.
and said, because the Magi were coming to see a king, and he said, where will the king be born? And his wise guys said, the prophet Micah says he'll be born in Bethlehem. So in response, what did Herod do? Went and killed all the little boys. Yeah, that's right, in Bethlehem. Matthew 2, 4, and 5, that's where we have this, okay? Once again, it's back to a prophet. Habakkuk 2:4. Habakkuk only has 3 chapters in it. Habakkuk 2:4, very well-known phrase. Behold, as for the proud one, his soul is not right with him, but the righteous will live by his faith. That ring any bells with anybody? This is a little tougher one. Do you know? Yes,
Hebrews chapter 11, or, no?
you're close.
Hebrews chapter 10.
Chapter 10, very good. And you picked the hardest of the 3 verses, interestingly enough. At the beginning of Romans and in Galatians and in Hebrews 10, these authors all quote this passage from Habakkuk. Most people can't even say Habakkuk. They don't quote from it. Okay? And it's only got 3 chapters in it, but this passage is of great significance, and they quote it to make a point. And we'll talk about this a little bit because this will be the key part for us to remember about Habakkuk. But it's quoted 3 times in the New Testament. Joel 2:28. Joel only has 3 chapters as well. It will come about after this that I will pour out my spirit on all mankind, and your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, young men will see visions. Now this was quoted by somebody in the New Testament saying that it was being fulfilled. Anybody remember?
It's in Acts.
Acts is correct.
Is it Peter?
It would be Peter at Pentecost. Yes, exactly. Acts 2:17. So in Acts 2, they quote Joel 2 and say this is what's happening when the Spirit came upon them. They said what Joel talked about is what's happening. No, the apostles are not drunk. That's what they were accused of. They said they are speaking languages that they have not learned, and this is the Spirit of God being at work, and it is what Joel was talking about. So there's things in the prophets. I just gave you that as a sample. There's a number of them in terms of there's key things in the prophets that show up in the New Testament that are important. They're bungee corded together is my illustration. So they're important. If you didn't have the prophets, you wouldn't have that stuff. You wouldn't know what it's about. So I would suggest to you that the prophets are worth studying because they're inspired, they're a major portion of Scripture, because of what we learned about the character of God, and because of the connection to the New Testament that frequently makes reference to the prophets and to the prophecies that the prophets made. Any questions? Okay, for most people, this is how they feel when they go into the prophets. Okay, this is really, that's really how people feel. It's like, boy, I don't know what I got myself into. I'm reading it, but I can't make any sense out of it. And I want to really help you with that. And it turns out there's 4 keys to doing this. And I'm really not trying to be dorky. Whenever somebody tells me there's some key to something, I'm like, yeah, right, I don't know that I believe you. Well, it turns out that if you don't like the word keys, I kind of react to the word keys, but I'm using it right now, I understand. But they really are keys to understanding the prophets. And if you understand these 4 things, you can negotiate through the prophets and make sense out of them. You really can. And so, but people try to make sense out of the prophets without the keys. And that's the issue that comes into play. Okay, so the first one is just understanding God's library. Understanding God's library. And we'll just start with some real basic stuff. I know that most of you know this, but in the Old Testament, how many books are there in the Old Testament? 39. Okay? 39. Now, there's numerous ways to remember this, but one of the ways to remember this, and you can just stick this away in your memory if you say, I don't remember exactly how many there are. Well, all you have to do is count the letters. Old, how many letters? 3. Okay, Testament, how many letters?
Whoa.
No, I mean, there's 39 books.
Killer.
Got it, okay? If you say, I don't remember what that number was again. Okay, then you go back to counting. 3 and 9, you got it. Shazam. Okay, 39, Old Testament, no problem. Okay, now, the Old Testament, in terms of those 39 books, it's a library, so they're divided into sections. And so, just like you do in a library that with topics or something, you have 3 sections. The historical books are the first section, and they go from Genesis through Esther. There's 17 of these. We're going to learn this in just a moment so that you have it down. The second section is poetical, and they're grouped together, because of the type of material they are. They were written in Hebrew poetry. Now, Hebrew poetry isn't the same as English poetry. What's the main feature of English poetry? Rhyming. Yeah, you have rhyming and meter and stuff. But in Hebrew poetry, what you have is you have similar meter, but you will have parallel statements that are antithetical or synthetic or explanatory or other things. So it's a parallel kind of concept. And all of those books were written in poetry, Hebrew poetry, interestingly enough. So they put them all together. Okay? And then the prophetical books, they were gathered together because these men were prophets, and what they wrote was written down. And so they put they're the messages. So they're kind of like the sermons. So here you have the stories, here you have the songs, if you like, and here you have the sermons in terms of the Old Testament. The stories, the songs, and the sermons. And they're grouped together. And I want you to know these things really well. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to ask questions and you're going to answer, kind of thing. We're going to review this real quick to make sure that you get this. This isn't overly hard. So, I start with how many books in the Old Testament? 39. Okay, divides into 3 sections. The first section is called historical books. How many books? 17. Second section is called political. How many books? 5 books. Third section is called prophetical. How many books? 17. You notice that the historical and prophetical are 17. That's a match on that, so it'll help you a little bit. 3 sections. Okay, how many books in the Old Testament?
39.
How many in the first section? 17. What's it called? How many in the second section?
5.
What's it called?
Poetical.
Third section, how many books?
17.
17. What's it called? Prophetical. So how many books in the Old Testament?
39.
How many in the Old Testament?
39.
39. Okay, very good. You're doing well so far. Now, when we look at these sections, we have the stories of what happened historically. We have the poetry that was written, and then we have the prophets, which we're going to spend our time on. Those are the sections that we're looking at if you're more picture-oriented, as am I. Now, when it gets to the New Testament, it's rather similar. How many books in the New Testament, though?
27.
27. Okay, well, now how do we remember 27? Well, actually, we do it the same way. We count new. How many letters? 3. Okay, Testament, how many letters? 9. Okay. Do you get it yet?
Yep.
3 times 9 is 27. Okay? So the New Testament multiplies, and you get 27. Just in case you get stuck sometimes saying, well, how does that work again? Just count them, multiply. 3 times 9, 27. Now, New Testament divides into 3 sections as well, which is rather nice. It's historical, which is just like the Old Testament historical books, 5 of them, the Gospels and Acts. And then you have the second section, which is letters, often called epistles or the wives of the apostles. Epistle is just a Greek word for letter. And so, if you're trying to sound intellectual, you refer to them as the epistles. Okay, but they're letters. 21 of those. And then it finishes with a prophetical book, but once again, there's only one. Now, and the name of that one book is? Revelation. Now, there's one thing I don't want you to do. We're not in the New Testament, but this does not have an S on the end. It's Revelation. Don't be saying Revelations. Okay? We're going to review this in a bit, and I want you not to do that. Okay? Revelation. Singular revelation from God through John. 1. No S. If you listen, people make this mistake all the time. Rather interesting. Okay, so on the New Testament, how many books in the New Testament? 27. Okay. How many in the first section? 5, what's it called? Historical, just like the Old Testament. Second section, what's it called? Letters, how many books? 21. Third section, what's it called? Prophetical, how many books? 1, what's it called? Revelation, how many books in the New Testament? 27. Okay, very good. Now, let's see what I've got next here. We have the historical books with the life of Christ in the early church with Acts. Then we have the letters, hence the stamp, and then the book of Revelation with the return of Christ. And so we put the whole thing together. We end up with 66 books in the whole thing. Now, a blank slide in there someplace. We should have a blank slide. Let me put a blank slide. Now, here's the key. Here's the key. We just did the library thing. I'm going to review it in a moment, make sure you all got it. Okay, but here's the key on the deal. The historical books, that's the beginning up there. I should just do this so I don't have to. I can't reach that far. So here's the beginning of the Old Testament, starts with Genesis. Here is the end of the Old Testament with Nehemiah and Esther. Do you understand? The Old Testament storyline has completed by the time you get right here. These do not come after that. In fact, these books are integrated into the historical books. Job was probably written before Genesis. That was probably, oops, that wasn't very good. Job was written before Genesis, or probably before Genesis. And these other ones are integrated in. Now here's the key, and I'll show it to you visually in terms of what happens with the prophetic books. You see where they are? That's where they fit in. Okay? Notice that one more time. That's where they fit in. They are in this time frame from the kings to the end. That's where they fit in. So if you're reading the Bible, and you're reading along in 1st and 2nd Kings and Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, and you go read the prophets, and it talks about some of the same things, that's why, because that's where they fit in. And if you don't, you have to understand where they fit in to make sense out of what they're saying. So that's why this is so key. It's this library issue. Okay, any questions on that? Do you see how that works? You've got to think of them as not coming after those books, but as being in there. Okay, I'll just make sure that you've got this first key, which is the library. How many books in the whole Bible? 66. How many in the Old Testament? 39. How many in the New Testament? How many in the New Testament? How many in the Old Testament? Okay, divides into 3 sections. First section called? How many books? Second section called? How many books? Third section's called? How many books? How many in the Old Testament? How many in the New Testament? How many in the Old Testament? How many in the whole Bible? How many in the New Testament? First section has how many books? 5. What's it called? Second section's called? Letters. How many books? Third section is called? Prophetical. How many books? Name of the book? How many books in the New Testament? How many in the Old Testament? How many in the whole Bible? Most of you are with me. That's very good. There's a couple looking a little confused, but for the most part you're doing all right. Okay, now let me not have anything up there. Okay, we'll just go through this once though. How many in the whole Bible? 66. How many in the Old Testament? How many in the New Testament? How many in the Old Testament? Okay, first section called? How many books? 17. Second section? Called? Poetical? Sorry, I'm delayed there. How many books? 5. Third section called? Prophetical. How many books? 17. New Testament, how many books? 27. First section, what's it called? How many books? 2nd section, how many books?
Letters.
How many books?
21.
What's it called?
Oops.
Letters. Okay, third section, what's the book?
Revelation.
What's the section? Prophetical. How many books in the New Testament?
27.
How many in the Old Testament?
39.
How many in the whole Bible?
66.
Okay, you need to know the library, and then you'll be able to make sense out of the prophets, understanding that they fit in. Okay, any questions on that? See how that works?
How many books are in the Old Testament?
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Okay. Okay, I think we need to keep cruising probably here. History of Israel. The other thing we need to understand is the history of Israel. What I mean by that is the timeline. Let me give you the timeline here. You are not responsible for memorizing this timeline. That was a little weak. Okay, we'll see some of this. Did not make the back up. You want to go? Okay, I'm guessing someone else still needs one.
Hi, can you?
Since I have 2 left. Actually, I'm supposed to have 2 left. Okay, everybody got one? Okay, I want you to see this timeline. This is an interesting exercise. If we had lots of time, I would have had you do this. I would have said, just for the exercise, take out a piece of paper. We're not doing this, but we're take out a piece of paper and draw the timeline of the Old Testament.
Wait, right now?
You don't have to.
Oh,
It's just
okay.
an illustration. Okay, so when I did this myself, I took out a piece of paper and I said, let me draw a timeline of the Old Testament. This is my result. This is what I came up with. Then after I'd scribbled it, I made it look pretty and that sort of thing. But this is not to scale, but you have creation, you have the flood, you have Abraham in Egypt, Noah with the flood, Moses with Egypt, and Joshua, Judges, and then Samuel and the kings, and divided kingdom, and all this stuff, and we'll spend time on it. And what you need to understand, similar to the library that I just went over, when we're talking about the written prophets are right there, okay? They're not earlier. They are showing up at the end of Solomon's reign, and on. That's when they are showing up. Now, there's prophets before this, but they aren't the writing prophets. And these prophets go all the way through the 3 returns. So that's where they're found in the Old Testament, those particular prophets. Now, if you're looking at the books of the Bible, here is where you're going to find them. Close, but not quite.
Adriana, can I have one?
Have what?
Paper.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, with respect to this part of the timeline, notice you have 1 Samuel covering Samuel, Saul, 2 Samuel covering David, and 1 Chronicles kind of below that, and then 1 Kings. And so these are the books where you read about this stuff. And remember, notice here's 1 Kings and there's 2 Kings, and you have Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther afterwards. When you're looking at this time frame right here, where these are at, that's why I'm saying 1 Kings, 2 Kings, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. The historical background for the prophets are found in those particular books. 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 2 Chronicles, and Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. Okay? Yes?
Just missing one back here.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Make sure and flag me and ask for it. Once again, I'm trying to give you context. Go ahead and turn to Dr. Bedware's book, pages 18 and 19. I think you'll find somewhat similar diagram. I had Dr. Bedware's book in my car, and then we hauled everything into where I'm staying, and now I can't find it. So I don't know what I did with my book. Anyway, you see the diagram there? Yeah, so mine is real parallel to that. I've drawn it slightly different, but I want you to see that he's got exactly the same information in that book. And his is even color coded as well. But if you understand that the prophets are ministering during 1st and 2nd Kings and 2nd Chronicles and Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, you're going to be able, it's one of the keys to make sense out of the prophets, because you understand the historical situation of what's happening, and then their message makes sense. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, here's what we're gonna do. I realize it's a little early for a 10-minute break here, but we're gonna take a 10-minute break. So at exactly 4 o'clock, class will be resumed over in the dining area. Okay, that's where we're gonna meet next. Okay?
What do you want us to do?
Nothing. Yourselves. Just come on over and pay attention.
You want us to bring clothes?
Well, I was kinda thinking you're probably gonna stay with whatever you got with you at the moment, you know, whatever. If your head's attached, bring it. If you have clothes on, bring them. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, this
So go with that. Yeah, it's important to be clear, so ask. So, you can, well, it is late in the afternoon.
Sorry. You want a week.
Well, it is, you know, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, for goodness sakes.
This is now a game. Starting now.
What are you talking about?
Where'd he go?
What do I lose?
It's so weird that he was up there. You're on the speaker.
Oh, no.